I think it's both exciting and depressing that messages like mine have an audience. I talk about really simple things like how to be fulfilled, and like how to do things that inspire us, and how to work for a company that sort of gets the best out of us and makes us feel good while they're doing it. And it's kind of upsetting that people even wanting to hear that, meaning that there's a demand for it. But that also presents the most remarkable opportunity in the world, which means there's an opportunity for us to change the way work is done, so that all of those things are not the exception, but rather the rule. It is the exception when somebody says, "I love my job." So you meet somebody at a bar, he's like, "What do you do?" "Oh, I love my job." "Oh, you're so lucky," right? It's like that should be something special, is remarkable. And so the amazing thing is that ability to say, "I love my job, I love what I do," is actually not that complicated to find. And not ironically, it has nothing to do with the work that we do. It has everything to do with the people with whom we work. And you don't even have to like the people with whom you work. That's the most amazing thing of all. If you think about it, in the military, there are people who are willing to risk their lives for people they don't even like. We don't even like to give up credit for things, So what is it that creates an environment in which people care about each other so much that they would risk their lives for people that they don't even like, right? Sometimes. This is remarkable to me. Human beings in all their complexity and all of the nonsense and all the messiness, what drives us is kind of simple. And this is what I like to research and learn about and write about, which is if you understand the very basic mechanics of this machine called the human being, it becomes fairly obvious as to what conditions in which the machine will perform well and in what conditions the machine will not perform well. Very simply, our machine is a social machine. We are social animals, and we respond to the environment we're in. That's it. Good people are capable of doing very bad things if they're in the wrong environment. And people who society may have given up on, if you put them in the right environment, are capable of performing remarkable, remarkable things. This is the job of leadership, which is to make that environment. The leader sets the tone, and the tone that is set will determine how we respond accordingly. And again, we are relatively simple in our motivations. If you go back to the Paleolithic era, when Homo sapien first stepped foot on the planet, about 50,000 years ago, there were other hominid species that existed at the same time, but we were the ones that survived. They died. We weren't necessarily the strongest, we weren't necessarily the fastest, and yet we've done quite well. Look at this remarkable world that we've built. One of the huge advantages we had and have is that we are social animals. And things like trust and cooperation are absolutely essential for our survival. They're not just nice ideas, they're absolutely essential. You can imagine why. When we lived in populations that never really got bigger than about 150 people, for 40,000 of the 50,000 years we've been on this planet, we never lived in populations bigger than 150 people. I understand scale presents some inherent problems. But you can understand the benefits of the group living. What it meant was I could fall asleep at night and trust that someone in my tribe would watch for danger. If I didn't trust the people in my tribe, I couldn't go to sleep. And this is not a very good system for survival or performance or any other metric. It's the same at work. When we work with people with whom we trust, I don't need to double check your work. I don't need to see it before it goes out. You don't need my approval, right? When we have trust, we can let people go do their work, and even if they're subordinate, we don't need to double check or approve or anything. Things will happen because we trust them, because we all have each other's backs. We all have each other's interests in mind. The problem with things like trust and cooperation is that they are not instructions. I can't simply tell you, trust me. You can't simply ask people to trust you in your advertising, and you can't simply tell people, I want you to cooperate. Trust and cooperation are feelings. And this is the problem. So the question is, where do those feelings come from? Now again, we are pretty simple in our motivation and our constructions. You can imagine what color should I use? You can imagine what life must have been like in these Paleolithic times. It was a world filled with danger. All of these forces working extremely hard to kill us. Whether it was the weather or lack of resources, saber-toothed tiger, nothing personal, but all of these forces were working together to end our lives. And so, as tribal animals, we worked together and lived and worked amongst people around whom we felt safe. We felt like we belonged. And when we felt safe amongst the people with whom we lived and worked, the natural human response is trust and cooperation. It's just what happens. When we do not feel safe amongst the people with whom we work, however, the natural human inclination is cynicism, paranoia, mistrust, and self-interest. When we do not feel safe amongst the people with whom we work, if our leaders do not make us feel safe, we have no choice but to spend our own time and our own energy to protect ourselves from each other. When we do not fear each other, we naturally work together to face the dangers and seize the opportunities. It's the exact same thing in our modern business world. There are forces that are constant and beyond our control that are working to kill you, right? Maybe I'm exaggerating. But there are forces outside, things like the uncertainty of an economy, the ups and downs of a stock market, a new technology that might render a business model obsolete overnight, your competition that sometimes is trying to kill you. It's trying to destroy that product or put you out of business, but at the very minimum is trying to frustrate your growth and steal your customers. These forces are constant and you have no control over them and never will. The only variable are the conditions inside the organization. And when those conditions are set in a manner that allows us to feel like we can trust and cooperate, we do. This is what leaders are supposed to do. There is an exact definition of leadership, and it is not my opinion. You know, I love all the books that come out and all the articles. What makes a great leader? What are the 5 things you need to be a leader? You need charisma, you need vision, you know, all of these things. I can tell you right now, those things are sometimes useful, but they're not essential. Not everyone has vision. Does that mean they're not allowed to be leaders? You know, some people have remarkable charisma and some people don't. Does that mean they will never lead? Of course, it's all nonsense. You can't manufacture these things. Some people are good strategic thinkers and some people are not. Some people are just naturally good at basketball and some people are not. There are skills, you can get better at them for sure, but you're either a visionary or you're not. These are not things that we can manufacture. In other words, they're not essential components for leadership. There's only one characteristic that I'm comfortable saying that all leaders must have to become leaders, and that's courage. Because leadership is hard, and it often requires sacrifice, and it will happen that you will have to put your interests, your comforts, your advantages aside so that others may gain. And that's sometimes really hard. In fact, standing up for others may mean that you might get your head chopped off. You know, a leader sometimes loses their job because they did the right thing, right? That comes with significant risk. The choice to be a leader comes at significant risk. And this is why not everyone chooses to be a leader. Leadership has nothing to do with rank. It has nothing to do with the title you have on your card. Leadership is a choice. That's it. I know many, many people who sit in the senior echelons of a corporation and they are not leaders. They are authorities and they have authority and we do what they say because they have authority over us. But we would not follow them. I know many people who sit at the bottom of organizations who have no authority, but they are absolutely leaders. And the reason they are leaders is because they have made a choice. They have chosen to look after the person to the left of them, and they have chosen to look after the person to the right of them. It doesn't always mean they have to sacrifice their interests, but when it really counts, sometimes they choose to sacrifice their interests because it's in the interest of the person to the left and to the right of them. This is what leadership is. The role of leaders is not an accident either. It's built into our anthropology. It's part of our survival, the reason we have hierarchy and we have leaders. For those times when we lived in these austere conditions, we had a little bit of a problem. It was a very practical problem. It wasn't necessarily enough food to go around all the time. We didn't have supermarkets and cars where we just go get milk. Sometimes there was food readily available and sometimes not. Which meant if someone brought home some food, and we're living in a population of up to 150, we would all rush in to eat because we're all hungry. And if you were lucky enough to be built like a football player, you could shove your way to the front of the line. If you were the artist of the family, you would get an elbow in the face. This is not a good system for cooperation. It's not a good system for survival, because the odds are that if I got punched in the face this afternoon, I'm not going to wake the guy if I see danger. Bad system. And so we evolved into these hierarchical animals. We are constantly assessing and judging each other, who's alpha, who's beta. We are naturally hierarchical, and we always organize ourselves in hierarchies. So even in meetings, we go to a meeting like, everybody's equal, I want you guys to work together. It's not going to happen. We are never equals. We always assess, we always judge, we always allow some others some deference and the role of leadership, and some of us defer and sort of take a more subordinate role. It always happens, not necessarily a bad thing. And again, the reasons are very practical based on our history. Because what would happen was, when we would assess someone as our alpha, and let me be clear, your capacity to be an alpha in any population is not an absolute. It is relative to the population you're in. So you might be a technologist or an engineer, and you might think you're the hottest, best, most fantastic engineer, and so does everybody else, and you walk around like this, and you go take a dance class, all of a sudden your ego's not so big anymore, right? We've all had the experience, right? We've all had the experience where we shake someone's hand and we're nervous. You're not the alpha, you know? Or when we can sense that someone's nervous meeting us, you're the alpha, right? It's a relative scale. So when we assess that someone in the population is alpha, we voluntarily step back and allow them first choice of meat and first choice of mate. We let them eat first. We may not get the best choice of meat, but we will eat eventually, and we didn't have to get an elbow in the face to get that food. Good system. To this day, we are very comfortable with paying deference and offering advantages to those more senior than us. There's not a single person in this room, zero, that has a problem with somebody more senior than you at the company making more money than you as a salary, having a bigger salary than you. It doesn't bother you at all. You might think they're an idiot, but it doesn't actually bother you that they make more money than you because they outrank you. No issue. It doesn't bother us at all that somebody more senior than us has a bigger office or a better parking space. It is of no issue whatsoever. In fact, we very often find ourselves deferring to our alphas, doing nice things for our alphas. We open doors for them and call them sir and ma'am and get them tea, and they didn't even ask. I can promise you that if, as you were walking out of this room, if Steven Spielberg happened to walk in, you would hold the door open for him. And then you would go home and tell your spouse or your boyfriend or your girlfriend, you'll never believe what happened today. I held the door open for Steven Spielberg. How come you don't advertise when you hold the door open for anybody else? It's because we're proud to sometimes do menial labor for those who we perceive as alphas in our system. We're proud to work for the groups that they lead and the organizations that they lead. By the way, you can't lead a company. You can run a company. You can only lead people. And so this whole idea of deference and how we always defer and sort of volunteer to these alphas is a natural human response, and it's a survival instinct, and it's all about this. And that's the point. None of those perks that you get for being the leader, for being the alpha, none of them come free. They come at a very high expense. You see, the group is not dumb. We expect that the person who's better fed, the person who's actually stronger or smarter than us, the person who has a higher self-confidence, has more self-confidence because of all our love and deference and hello sir and hello ma'am, and to actually boost their self-confidence. We expect that this more confident, stronger, better fed person, when danger threatens the tribe, we expect them to rush towards the danger to protect us. That's the cost of leadership. That's why we gave you first choice of mate, because you might die. And we want to keep your genes in the gene pool. We're not stupid. And this is what it means to be a leader, the willingness to rush towards the danger to protect those in your care. It is a choice. You don't have to be a leader. It is a choice. If you don't like the costs of leadership, you may not accept the perks of leadership because they do not come for free. This is the reason why we are so viscerally offended by some of the banking CEOs have these disproportionate salaries and bonus structures. It's not the money that offends us. It's that we know deep inside us that they have violated the very definition of what it means to be a leader. They have accepted all of the perks and bonuses and benefits of being the leader, and yet they're not willing to make any of the sacrifices for the role that they have accepted. In other words, we know that they allowed their people to be sacrificed for them to keep their bonuses and perks and advantages. Worse, sometimes they chose to sacrifice their people to protect their bonuses and their perks. This is what so offends us. It's not the money. If I told you we're going to give a $150 million bonus to Nelson Mandela, does anyone have a problem with that? No. How about a $250 million bonus to Mother Teresa? Got an issue with that? No. It's not the money. It's not the money. It's that leadership is a choice. And in our modern day and age, unfortunately, many of the people who like to call themselves leaders are not leaders at all. They are authorities. That's all they are. And we have to do what they say because they have authority over us, but we would not follow them. And this is a problem. Because when we do not feel that they have our backs, when we do not feel safe working inside their organizations, they force us to spend our time and our energy to protect ourselves from them. And the organization itself suffers. It's what happens. It's ironic to me that organizations like your own, who want to drive innovation and ideas and new ways of thinking, would in the same breath lay people off because they didn't make the numbers in 1 year. You do realize that those two concepts are completely counterproductive. It's like talking to a CEO and I ask, what are your priorities? They say, we have two priorities, innovation and efficiency. Not possible. There is nothing efficient about innovation. Try, fail, try, fail, try, fail, try, fail, try, fail, try, fail, succeed. Not efficient. It takes you throw money to try things out. You can be innovative or you can be efficient. You can be efficient and hope for innovation, and you can be innovative and hope for efficiency. There's always going to be one subordinate to the other. Not bad, not better or worse, but let's not kid ourselves and think that they can be equal grounds. They cannot. It is impossible. But worse, an organization that claims or hopes or desires or aspires to be innovative must, at every expense, commit themselves to the safety of their people. Because only when we feel safe and protected will we voluntarily commit ourselves to the support of each other and the advancement of the vision. There are very simple ways to do this. Here are just a few. Great leaders would never sacrifice the numbers, would never sacrifice the people to save the numbers. Great leaders would sacrifice the numbers to save the people. And so when we live in a day and age where our leaders are so comfortable sending you home to tell your spouse and your kids, I'm sorry, I no longer have an income because the company had to make its numbers for the year. Forget about the people who lost their jobs. What about the people who didn't get laid off? How inspired do you think they feel to come back to work every day? How safe do you think they feel? Do you think we're going to give our best knowing at the next time if the company doesn't make its numbers? By the way, which may or may not have anything to do with us. Remember all of those outside dangers, the ups and downs of technologies, the ups and downs of stock markets, the ups and downs of economies? You think when you have a bad year, you sit your children down and say, kids, it's been a bad year, we have to get rid of one of you. Or worse. Or worse. I got to keep my Mercedes, and so it's either you or the car, and we've picked you. Right? No, we tighten the belt. We work together. We figure out ways to make it happen, to see it through the hard times. We cannot judge the quality of a crew based on how they perform in good times. We judge a quality of the crew by how they perform in rough waters. And unfortunately, we throw our crew overboard when we hit rough waters. What makes them want to commit to see the ships make it through the rough waters? What they do is they sit down and watch their own backs because nobody else is going to watch my back. There is no innovation in a group like that. There is no innovation in a group like that. Backstabbing, idea stealing, plenty of that. Nothing personal, gotta look after numero uno. So number one, people come first. Numbers are always subordinate to people. Numbers will not rescue you in hard times, people will. Numbers will not come up with new ideas, people will. Numbers are not innovative, people are. That's number one. Another one which is really, really, really easy is honesty. It's really easy to be honest. Just tell the truth. And if you tell the truth on a regular basis, we will say you have integrity. That's all it means. These are really basic concepts. So for example, if somebody calls and a secretary picks up the phone and says, Dave's on the phone, and you say, tell him I'm not here. You've just sanctioned lying inside your organization. That's what you've done. You have said that when it suits you, even if these lies are small, you may tell lies. That was dishonest. I went to visit Quantico Marine Base, where the Marine Corps selects their officers. And on the day I was there, true story, I was waiting in a conference room for the colonel in charge of OCS to come and give us a briefing on the base about OCS, about the selection process. And he arrived late. Marines don't ever arrive late. And he showed up late. He came in and apologized. He said, I'm sorry, we've had an incident with one of our Marines. So I go, what happened? You know? He said, well, we're considering throwing him out of OCS, which means throwing him out of the Marine Corps. And I'm thinking, what law